This is chapter 17, organizational change and stress management. Please note there's a video that you can watch that just is an example of stress management. Key concepts for today: forces of change, sources of resistance to change, matrix of agreeability and influence, overcoming resistance to change, 4 main approaches to change. We'll go over Lewin's 3-step model, Kotter's 8-step plan for implementing change, what action research is, and organizational development. Does anyone have an example of organizational change they experienced? Think about it. At a company you worked at, have they ever redone the way it was designed? When I worked at Bank of America, they constantly were restructuring in order to change how the company was operating. Other examples might be redoing the regions, making them larger or smaller, changing management, or even changes in owners. Organizational change is the movement of an organization from one state of affairs to another. So as I mentioned, some examples already, but changes in company structure, strategy, policies, procedures, technology, or culture. Forces of change. Rapid changes in technology. So there are many, and the textbook's going to list some, and we'll go over some here. There's the nature of the workforce, technology, economic shocks, competition, social trends, and world politics, but there are many more. So technology. Moore's law of Gordon Moore, co-founder of Intel Corp, dictates that the overall complexity of computer circuits will double every 18 months with no increase in cost, motivating corporations to rapidly change their technology. So for example, records switch to CDs, to Napster, to iTunes, or another example is AI and the virtual changes that are happening today. AI is changing how business is conducted and how decisions are made. It's also changing virtual advancements in office environments and how they're changing so that we can do remote settings for work. Workforce demographics. As the workforce generations change, their preferences do as well. So this is benefits they prefer that they might change, or work arrangements such as flexible hours and job sharing might be more popular. As you can see here, based on the different generations, income might have been higher, populations were different, but technology and social networking have definitely increased with the millennials. Since 2005, telecommuting has grown 73% across all sectors and a remarkable 474% in the US government. After COVID hit, a lot of companies switched to using remote and continued to do so even after things started to improve. The text also discusses economic shocks like the housing market crash in 2007. Another example is how, just to go back to this, another example is how in teaching, we send communication in multiple ways. So in different generations, they either use technology or they don't. So an example of this might be if you're a teacher and you have older students, they might prefer an email or to get the information in class, whereas a millennial might prefer to get a text with communication about the information. So in the childcare I own, we use an app to update parents with pictures and information about the child's day. However, there are parents who need a phone call when something happens instead of just that quick text. And so it's important to know who prefers what and make sure you respond to that. Resistance to change. There's economic factors, security, habit, fear of the unknown, and selective information processing. Selective information processing is when individuals hear what they want to hear, ignoring information that conflicts with what they believe. Careful, resistance to change is one of the top 2 reasons why change efforts fail. Just going back to Exhibit 17.1 here. This covers some of the individual sources and organizational sources of resistance to change. There's habits, which is to cope with life's complexities. We rely on habits or program responses. But when confronted with change, this tendency to respond in our custom ways becomes a source of resistance. There's a few more here, but for selective information processing, individuals are guilty of selectively processing information in order to keep their perceptions intact. They hear what they want to hear, and they ignore information that challenges the world they've created. And to go over some of the organizational sources. Limited focus of change. Organizations consist of a number of interdependent subsystems. One can't be changed without affecting the others. So limited changes in subsystems tend to be nullified by the larger system. Group inertia. This is even if individuals want to change their behavior, group norms may act as a constraint. So if everyone at your job is doing something a certain way, you might feel pressured and have a hard time making that change. Reactions to change. One example of this is the QWERTY keyboard, which is what we use now. The layout was developed to prevent jamming in early typewriters by placing commonly used letters farther apart. The layout remained standard throughout the years, whereas the Dvorak keyboard was supposed to help increase typing speed, but the resistance to change led it to not being widely accepted. In reactions to change, there's active resistance, passive resistance, compliance, and enthusiastic support. Obviously, as a manager, you prefer to have support. With active resistance, employees might sabotage the change effort and be outspoken about their objections. So they might say, I hate this change, or I don't agree with this, and be very vocal about it. Passive resistance is when the employees might be disturbed by the change, but don't really mention it or voice their opinion. Compliance is when employees go along with the changes just because they have to, but are not enthusiastic about it. And enthusiastic support. These are when defenders of the new way encourage everyone around them to give support to the change as well. So one big change I made at my company was we went from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week with a 10-hour schedule. Overall, there was enthusiastic support. There was a little bit of passive resistance from a couple people, but for the most, it was enthusiastic support, and it went very well, and it helped with the employees, and actually helps to retain employees because they enjoy having a day off in addition to the weekend. Usually when we have staff that are resisting changes, I always recommend having them do it for 2 weeks and saying we'll go back to it. Because a lot of times people adjust to the change within that period and are more likely to accept it. So I'll say, well, let's try this for a couple weeks and then we can try something else. And when we revisit it, it's usually improved by then. Organizational sources of resistance to change. So we went over a couple of these, but there's structural inertia, limited focus of change, group inertia, threat to expertise, and threat to established power relationships. You are going to do an activity on the Who Moved My Cheese, so I'm going to skip over that. Overcoming resistance to change. It's important to know what these 8 tactics are. There's communication, which is providing high quality information. Participation. This can reduce resistance, obtain commitment, and increase quality of the change decision. So when you get people involved in the decision, they're participating, it reduces the resistance. Building support and commitment. This is people are more accepting if they're committed to the organization as a whole, or committed to you as a manager as a whole. If they are committed to you, they're more likely to agree with the different changes and at least give it a try. Developing positive relationships. More willing to accept if they trust the managers and see them as legitimate. So if they trust you, they'll trust you when you say this is for the better and give it a try. Manipulation and co-optation. Manipulation is covert influence attempts, and co-optation is combining manipulation and participation. So the example of this is you might twist the facts to make something seem more attractive and withhold information. But if people become aware that they are being tricked, the credibility that you have as a manager will drop to 0. Another example of resistance to change is implementing changes fairly. If you can explain the reason for the change, they might perceive the implementation as consistent and fair. So if they see that having a 10-hour work week is a good change because it makes sense and it's fair to everyone, they might agree to do it. Another way to do this is by choosing the right people. I talked earlier about how important interviewing and selecting the right people is. The other reason for that is that they might be more accepting to change if you choose people who are more likely to adjust to change. So remember personality, choose people that are more adaptable to change. And then coercion. This is when you threaten someone with a forced transfer. What we did in the horrible bosses example, he threatens him by saying he won't be able to get another job. So he's coercing him into doing what he wants. There are 4 main approaches for managing change. In Lewin's 3-step model, this is Kurt Lewin who suggested this model, and he argued successful change follows 3 steps. There's the unfreeze stage, which is the status quo. There's the movement stage, and then the refreeze stage. Driving forces must be increased, restraining forces decreased, and restraining is people questioning the need for the change. So critics of this say it's similar to Maslow's hierarchy. It assumes it's sequential. Also, the freezing language isn't good because time keeps moving, so using the word frozen isn't always a good idea. So again, the 3 stages in Lewin's 3-step model, it's unfreeze, which is overcoming pressures of individual resistance and group conformity. Movement, where you change the process that transforms organization from the status quo to the desired state. And then refreeze, when you find stabilization with the change. Errors made when leading change. Not establishing a great enough sense of urgency. Not creating a power enough guiding coalition. Lacking a vision. Under communicating the vision. Not removing obstacles to the new vision, not systematically planning for it and creating short-term wins, and declaring victory too soon and not anchoring changes in the corporation's culture. Let's look at Kotter's 8-step plan. So this is by John Kotter. This lists common mistakes that managers make first. There's 8 sequential steps to overcome these problems. The first 4 are similar to the unfreezing stage in Kurt Lewin's model. 5 through 7 are movement, which is similar to Kurt Lewin's model. And then the 8th level is freezing. So first, you want to establish a sense of urgency by creating a compelling reason for why change is needed. Form a coalition with enough power to lead the change. Create new vision to direct the change and strategies for achieving the vision. And communicate the vision throughout the organization. This is all unfreezing. Then for movement, empower others to act on the vision by removing barriers to change and encourage risk-taking and creative problem solving. Plan for, create, and reward short-term wins that move the organization toward the new vision. Consolidate improvements, reassess changes, and make necessary adjustments in the new programs. This is important. If you try something new at a business and you implement a change and it does not go well, make changes to see if you can make it go better. Don't just give up on it, or don't just let it play out if you see that it's not working. Sometimes changes don't work, so it's good to reassess how it's going. And lastly, the refreeze stage. This is stage 8 in Kotter's 8-step plan. This is reinforcing the changes by demonstrating the relationship between new behaviors and organizational success. Action research. This is a change process based on the systematic collection of data and the selection of a change action based on what the analyzed data indicates. So the process consists of 5 steps. You diagnose, analyze, give feedback, create action, and an evaluation. It provides at least 2 specific benefits for an organization. It's problem focused, and there's a reduction in resistance to change because the employees are involved. An example of this is I did action research for my thesis when I was doing my master's for early childhood education. I did a thesis on how a calm down center would impact the education in a classroom and different behaviors and emotional levels in the classroom. Organizational development. This is a collection of planned change interventions built on humanistic democratic values that seek to improve organizational effectiveness and employee well-being. The organizational development methods value human and organizational growth, collaborative and participative processes, and a spirit of inquiry. Techniques for bringing about change. These include sensitivity training, which is training that groups seek to change behavior through unstructured group interaction. There's also survey feedback. This is the use of questionnaires to identify discrepancies among member perceptions. Discussion follows and remedies are suggested. Process consultation. This is meetings in which a consultant assists clients in understanding the process events with which he or she must deal and identifying processes that need improvement. Team building. There's a high interaction among team members to increase trust and openness. Intergroup development. This is organizational development efforts to change the attitudes, stereotypes, and perceptions that groups have of each other. And lastly, appreciative inquiry. This is an approach that seeks to identify the unique quantities and special strengths of organization, which they can be built on to improve performance. All right, now let's look at stress at work. So think about, when have you ever been stressed at work? I'm sure all of you have at some point, multiple times. The impact of stress on workers and organizations is substantial. There's worker stress. 83% of workers in the US experience stress, resulting in workplace accidents and financial losses. Stress causes $300 billion in losses annually and results in 1 million people missing work daily. Hindrance stressors such as red tape and office politics have a more negative effect on safety compliance, employee engagement, job satisfaction, and organizational commitment compared to challenge stressors. Desire to punch coworkers. 29% of workers have admitted wanting to punch a coworker as a result of stress. Potential sources of stress. There's environmental factors, might be economic uncertainty, like when COVID hit. Organizational factors, role demands or interpersonal demands. Personal factors, you might find stress from family problems or economic problems. Individual differences, people have different job experience or personality traits, or even the perception of how something's being done. Cultural differences, how people experience stress. Physiological symptoms. These consequences include immediate effects, long-term illnesses, and chronic health conditions. Psychological symptoms, including anxiety and lower emotional well-being and lower job satisfaction. And behavioral symptoms, including lower job performance, higher absenteeism, and higher turnover. There are multiple stress symptoms that include physiological, psychological, and behavioral symptoms. Physiological symptoms of stress. These are changes in metabolism, increased heart and breathing rates, increased blood pressure, headaches, heart attacks, backaches, eye strain, sleep disturbances, dizziness, fatigue, and loss of appetite. Psychological symptoms. This can be job dissatisfaction, tension, anxiety, irritability, boredom, procrastination, and low emotional well-being. And behavioral symptoms. These are lower productivity, increased absences and turnover, personal changes in eating habits, increased consumption of alcohol, increased smoking, rapid speech, fidgeting, and sleep disorders. So these are various approaches to managing change and stress. Time management techniques. These are methods for effectively allocating and organizing time to improve productivity and reduce stress. Physical exercise, engaging in activities such as walking, jogging, swimming, or cycling to promote physical well-being and relieve stress. Relaxation techniques, practices like meditation, hypnosis, deep breathing, and mindfulness to achieve a state of relaxation and calmness. Social support networks, building and maintaining connections with friends, family, and colleagues to seek emotional support and help in coping with change. It can be very helpful to speak to someone at your job. However, sometimes it can almost make it worse because you're both complaining about the same thing. So sometimes it's good to speak with friends and family as well. Selection, placement, and training. Applying effective recruitment, placement, and training strategies to align employees with their job roles and develop necessary skills for change management. Establishing clear and attainable goals to provide direction and motivation during times of change. Redesigning jobs. Modifying job roles and responsibilities to make them more suitable for change and increase employee engagement. So you might make a job part-time remote to help with someone who needs less commute time. Employee involvement, encouraging employee participation and input in decision-making processes to foster ownership and commitment to change initiatives. We've mentioned this multiple times, but getting the employees involved will help them agree to changes. Organizational communication, improving communication channels and practices within the organization to clarify roles, reduce ambiguity, and provide timely information during periods of change. And employee sabbaticals, offering extended breaks or time off to employees for personal rejuvenation and reflection, which can enhance their readiness for change. I had a director of the childcare who took a sabbatical for an extended period to hike and just work on focusing on her health. And wellness programs. This is implementing organizationally supported programs that focus on improving employees' overall physical and mental health, such as workshops to quit smoking. Let's watch the stress techniques video on how to do, she gives a fun technique on how to manage stress.
Home. Everybody sit on the floor, Indian style, like.
Oh, you know what? It skipped over this. Hold on.
I want you to think about the last time you had a
This
really
is
good
with Karen
laugh.
Buxman.
Same sea of blank faces I see from coast to coast. We're gonna do a little research because boy, NACU's all about research and education. And so what we're gonna do here is on the count of three, if you're physically able, I'll ask you to stand. If not, do this from a seated position. But on the count of three, stand and then facing me, I want you to just take a deep breath. And then I want you to put the shape of a smile on your face. For the purpose of this research, this does not have to be a real smile, okay? I will give you one last set of instructions and then you can sit down and groan loudly and we will give you the reasons for this research. All right, count of three. 1, 2, 3, stand. Take a deep breath. Now put the shape of a smile on your face. And I need to see teeth. I don't care if they're yours, okay? Now, last set of instructions. Turn and make eye contact with the victim to your left or right. And now sit down groaning loudly. Ah. This is great. This is great. All right, two things here. One, now everybody has a tool. If you had to leave right this minute, and please don't, but if you had to leave right now, you would have a tool. The next time you go back to work and you're sitting at your desk and you think if one more person puts one more thing on my desk, I'm gonna have to snatch them bald-headed. Now all you have to do is facing your entryway, doorway, or hallway, sitting or standing, just do this. Because the next person to walk in and see you looking like this, they're gonna know that now is not the time to bother you. You can play with your pain. You can be intentional. Doing little exercises. Here's another one that you may have known, you just forgot you knew it. Hold out your right thumb, forefinger about an inch apart. Close your left eye. Now find someone's head across the room. Bring your thumb and forefinger together and squish. They don't even know they were hit. Oh. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So that's just a stress technique video by TEDx speaker Karen Buxman. Now let's watch this stress technique at work using The Office. So the video is just joking about Michael causing the actual stress for everyone. So I posted for you guys the stress management video. It's loaded into Play-Doh and activities. It's about 6 minutes long and it's just a meditation, which is really helpful to help you calm down when you're stressed. Like, for example, if you're studying for a final exam or a lot of final exams and need to reduce your stress. So feel free to use that. And that is the end of chapter 17. Thank you.